I know you must be a bit tired. You've just come out of the High Court on day 2 of a hearing against, could you name the parties that you've been up against?
Right.
It's actually your claim, isn't it?
Yeah. Westminster Council, Metropolitan Police, Secretary of State, Department.
And it's not due for another day. You're just waiting for the judgment? Yes.
Probably sometime next week. And we'll probably come back here. I think that's probably the best thing to do and listen to it properly. So we're hopeful. I think whatever happens, we win. There's 3 options, and we win, win, and win. Option is that we lose, but then we go to appeal and hopefully get an interim injunction again. If we don't get the injunction, they might then take the box, which is, I mean, a tent is nothing because you can replace a tent just like that. A box, you can't. You have to build it on site, and they're never going to allow all the wood and material to be transported there. At least not in this moment in time that we're in. So, but then we can get publicity, and the box will have to be taken on a crane and put on a lorry, and so, you know, that will be quite historic in its own right. And that box, along with a previous box that was there, which we've still got, which is in storage, plus artwork that is attached, like a portfolio that will go with these boxes, is all going to be auctioned at some stage, so that we can send money back to Iraq. There's a children's centre there.
Oh, brilliant.
And you know, children suffering trauma, and you know, and need to be socialised and have fun, and it all costs money. So it'll be a small amount of money. Whatever we raise is never enough money, but it'll be a token back to that country from ordinary people, grassroots people of this country, saying, you know, in whatever way that we can, that we're really, really sorry. And it's just a sort of linking back with ordinary people there that have suffered. We are aware of their suffering, you know, and we've suffered equally in a strange way. None of us are ever going to escape that suffering either. Yeah. We are aware of the injustice at the war with Iraq and what's going on in Afghanistan now, and the effects it's had on people there. So that will be something good from Parliament Square, and then the challenges will go on anyway to this new law. So whatever happens, you know, we're on a roll.
So how long have you been at Parliament Square for?
I've been associated there over 10 years. I've been living there 6 years.
6 years. And how many times have you actually had to be in court over?
This is the first time myself personally I've had to be in High Court.
Okay.
So
was there any other court hearings?
Well, I've been with Brian to his court hearings years ago. Okay. But obviously they weren't directly affecting me. So this is the first time I've been in High Court myself.
So you made this claim yourself for against these 3 parties?
Yes.
And then you added an injunction. Is that right?
Well, yes.
Is it a claim, or is it just an injunction?
I've got legal grounds to be at Parliament Square, which is sanctioned with authorisations. However, they're saying a new law that's come in now sort of trumps the laws that. The law that I have with the SOP authorisations is still valid. It's not been repealed yet. So that's still running, but meanwhile they've got another law in saying that they could take them. So they were acting under this new law called PRASRA, Police Reform and Social Responsibility Act. So I basically, with the lawyers of course, we asked them to cease, not to give us assurance that they were not going to act and take the tents and the box structures over the Christmas period, and they wouldn't say, they would not commit themselves. So basically there was a threat over Christmas, and I did find out since then from different members or people working in and around the square that the plan was that they were going to take them. So when we realised that, we came to the High Court, got an injunction. So it was saved, the whole camp was saved over Christmas. But when we came to the court on January the 16th, the court then agreed for the injunction for myself to continue, but it didn't necessarily mean that the other people. Although on that date, it was assumed by everybody, including other parties in the case, that the camp would be safe. But anyway, 7:30 that night, they came and took the rest of the camp, all the tents basically, and structures, and so therefore that's left myself with a tent and a structure which is still under the injunction as I speak now, and so that's what we've challenged in the court.
So were other people made homeless? Because I believe there were sometimes homeless people who stayed
there was, but there was, to be honest with you, most of those tents were empty. They weren't occupied anyway.
Okay.
So, you know, and then when they did get moved on, they didn't want to challenge anything, you know. And point is, we had a ludicrous situation whereby if you went along there and somebody might have vacated a tent that morning, and you know, you're homeless, maybe you're an alcoholic, you're on drugs, you've got social problems, you're just looking for a space to sort of chill out and have a sleep. You go into the tent, no one challenges you, you stay there, you stay the night, next day you're up, out and about doing your business, go back to the tent that night, it's still there, and basically you then claim that tent. People around you acknowledge, recognise you, leave you, that's your tent. And that went on indefinitely. Nobody then ever went to you or challenged you, who are you, what are you doing here? What is, you know, are you protesting? What's the campaign? So you can't blame people for having basically then stayed, because there was nothing to say they shouldn't.
Yeah, and the public, they indirectly agreed with the protest anyway.
Well, they agreed with the protest, but they didn't know the difference.
Yes.
That's the point. They didn't know the difference. So when it became antisocial or sort of in a semi-abandoned state, that none of the authorities came to you know, check out who was there. Is this tent abandoned? Why is all this rubbish everywhere? They basically left it to fester so that everything looked bad. So the public would turn against us and say, well, yeah, the case of enough is enough, it's all gone too far, could be made.
And what sort of support are you getting right now?
Well, most of the people here that I've known for years. So, you know, we've all been associated at Parliament Square in one way or another. And campaigns going back years for a lot of people here. And everybody here commonly is against what's happening, you know, well, what's happening in Afghanistan now, and possibly now leading up to war with Iran. So, you know, we're stuck in this kind of strange world. And we can't leave it, even if we want to. What do we do? You know, so the fight has to go on. There's no option.
Rather than sit at home watching these wars from one settee. And
I think that would be unbearable.
You chose to get out there.
When the Tamils were at Parliament Square 2009, I think an awful lot of them would have had nervous breakdowns, or you would have even had suicides had they not been at the square screaming and shouting for 3 months. Because their people were dying. A lot of the Tamils lost some family members, like 12, 15 family members. And they might even hear them, because, you know, you've got mobile phones, you've got satellite, you can link up. They were traumatised. They went down to the square. They had legitimate reason to be there, and our government was involved in it, and supplied money for arms for the Sri Lanka government. They knew what was going on, so they vented their feelings, and they basically were trying to get help for their own families in Sri Lanka. If they hadn't been there, I think there would have been major sort of problems, repercussions, and I think for ourselves too. We're all associated because we're all against the war, but not just that now, just all the social injustice that's going on, because the issues get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Because now that we're in a recession, there's obviously a situation here in the UK has resulted in a lot of marches. So you were there when the riots took place. And you obviously, Parliament Square was filled with students. Extremely upset.
Yeah, no, it was extraordinary. I mean, it was extraordinary because it was the first time that I've seen the youth, if you like, remobilised. A lot of them would have been maybe 10, 12 when we went, or 8, something like that, when we went to war with Iraq. Now this is 10 years later. They've grown up in that injustice, if you like, and they've probably heard it from people, you know, family members, older members, their communities. They've researched it. A lot of them, you know, people get a lot of information now from the internet, and they've been radicalised, and now they see the injustice all over again. I mean, a lot of that was to do with the fees and university. But the point is, they need a life, they need a future. You know,
and technically, in a very short space of time, within minutes and hours, Parliament Square nearly got smashed to pieces. However, you've been there all this time, you've not committed criminal damage, and yet they seem to be waging war against you in
Well, I don't see it like that because I understand where they're coming from.
Yes,
and and
they weren't provoked because the horses actually galloped onto protesters.
Yes,
they got very serious, which was absolutely criminal.
Well, the problem is it's a bit like a war. They say laws of war and laws of engagement.
Not enough to provoke those students that time.
Well, no, the thing is, once you're in a war situation, war by definition is hell. There cannot be laws there. There cannot be, once you engage in a group of people fighting, shooting each other, machine gunning, people being blown up, you can't stop to rationalise what's right and wrong anymore because you've gone past all that. And the same with, that's the problem, isn't it? They're similar in a sense. When you get a full confrontation going on, sort of certain rules, people become, they act as a mob, and the police do too. They get scared.
Especially when they're charging their horses, because that was
when people get scared, and it transcends to both sides, if you like. The judgment or of who's right or wrong, in a sense, it becomes secondary because, in a sense, this fear factor takes over and sort of what you would logically do or sort of common sense flies out the window, and that's the problem then, because then it's hard to control because you can't necessarily rationalise at that moment in time.
So you've had the lawyers Feynmans at court defending you.
Yes.
And they've given several grounds for your case. But the main issues seem to be with regards to the Human Rights Act.
Yes.
And issues concerning the Constitution and the state's obligation to facilitate.
It got very complicated. I mean, because obviously we've got a lot of parties, they're all arguing to what would seem a simple act of removing somebody with a tent and the box that I've got. It would, but it's very, very complex, and they know that, so they've obviously had to sort of delve into all sorts of to justify it. But what you can't get round is what they haven't identified, if you like, is the issue of what harm is being done. And there's no evidence of harm. That's the point. So what are Parliament legislating against? What are they trying to protect people from?
And in fact, what they're doing is they're doing harm by chilling. Words like chilling was used, and prohibiting of deterring people from. There was some other word that was used. More or less discouraging people from actually using the right to protest.
Yes.
So it was having a negative effect.
Well, it's the fear of, and I think in one of the articles it said that if you legislate and make something criminally potential liable to prosecution, then 99% of the people will adhere to that. In other words, they won't do that action because they don't want to get prosecuted. So the chilling effect on Parliament Square is that you are unable to stay indefinitely. So that means you can't travel and commute every day. Even if you live in London, to get into central London and back on say the tube, you're looking at maybe £5 a day. People won't have the money because obviously if you're spending the time at Parliament Square, you're either not earning money or you're on minimum money, or you're giving up something in order to be there. So in the end, it's not going to be viable. So the chilling effect is, if you do want to stay, you're going to have to clash with the authorities, if you like. And a lot of people don't want to do that.
And if you win the case, what will you be doing? When are you getting the result again?
Well, next week we should get the result. Hopefully come here and listen to it. Then our next action will be to appeal it.
Sorry, if you win though, you
if we
need
win,
to appeal.
Oh well, then
you can continue to protest.
We will continue, and then we've got a war coming up with Iran. You know, the thing is too, I think they work ahead. They're frightened of an uprising in this country. That's what they're frightened of. They're frightened of people. And the last place that they want them, because it's so high profile, is Parliament Square. They don't want people gathering like en masse like the Tamils. Recently we had the Congo demonstrations, huge in Whitehall. They blockaded the whole of Whitehall. You know, when you get people en masse, they cannot be legislated against, in effect. So long as they're peaceful, what can you do? And if their right is a right to be there, and you know,
and do you think that this fear could possibly generate undue influence over your case if there is a political,
that's a possibility.
politically,
yes,
regardless of the merits of your case,
yes,
that politically the judges could seem to act in the interest of politics,
that is
and the current government and the Prime Minister, who at the moment have taken quite serious action against protesters recently with the destruction of St. Paul's, Occupy movement, and Bank of Ideas and the School of Ideas. There's been quite rapid destruction of protest.
Peace Strike campaign is predominantly, has been set up as a preemptive campaign not to attack Iran. We've been campaigning for 5 years. You know, we have got a lot of material out there now, and the point is, one of the authorisations is a vigil for Iran. You know, and today we had or would have had, I had to cancel it, a demonstration for Iran. So the point is, they know that, and they know now that we're all connected, you know, as a movement. And they fear then that if that is the course they're going to take, obviously they don't want us radicalising the people and bringing them en masse and making challenges in Whitehall and Westminster, because basically, you know, over the last few years we've been, you know, this is exactly what we've been doing.
And the main issue with the war was that they didn't actually act lawfully, because they could have followed due process with the war. And the main...
Well, they never will. You know, war is war. It will never be legal, will it? I don't think you can have a war that is legal.
Yeah.
You know.
But they did act illegally in this case. So it was more about protesters actually upholding the law itself. The fact that they rushed in there when it wasn't actually, they didn't have the legal right to enter into Iraq and start that war.
Yeah.
So protesters in fact began with trying to uphold the law, but right now you're being painted as being unlawful. But right now you haven't had, most protesters have been peaceful at the protest camp.
At Parliament Square?
At Parliament Square.
Yes.
It's been a protest.
I mean, I don't think they know, apart from the message that people are giving out, it's a bit exactly like the Occupy, St. Paul's and Finsbury. It's not you as a threat. They can deal with you all as people, if they have to. You're not a threat as an individual, but it's the message, isn't it? The tents aren't a threat. They made a big thing with Democracy Village that we were desecrating the area, they were causing criminal damage, and that basically there was going to be long-term damage. There was no long-term damage done at Parliament Square, and since the tents were taken on the 16th of January this year, that once the tents were actually picked up and thrown in and swept, there was nothing. There was no sign that tents were ever even there. So this sort of big drama of sort of, you know, it's almost like we were being sacrilegious and having gone into a church and were breaking it up so that when you went in there, we lost this great history. There's nothing to be lost there. It's the message. That's what they don't want.
And so one could say this links in with the freedom of information.
Well, yes, because on the TV now everything is controlled, isn't it? So therefore, they give out. It's a bit like the court. There's a lot of information in the court today that they didn't give out. I mean, I know because I know, because they all play their cards, all of them. So they're only going to give out what suits them, but they're not going to give out all the other stuff. So, and obviously as human beings, individually, we all